Hello and welcome to another in the series of TSSA's webinars for members. I'm Jenny Sutton, I'm the Executive Director. I want to welcome you here today and tell you why we're doing this particular webinar. We rarely do webinars that are focused on a particular product, and we're not doing that today. What we're here today for is to talk about online auctions. Most of you know that several years ago, TSSA lobbied to make sure that online auctions are a part of the Chapter 59 statute. And we were successful. And, you know, we wanted it to be in the statute. It is in the statute now. We've watched many, many members get on the online auction train. But there are a lot of you that are still not there, and it leaves us wondering when there is something so good for you that you're not taking advantage of. So today is not an infomercial. It's not about how to use a particular platform. It is about why you should be doing online auctions and how to do online auctions. And we have a group of people here with experience, both in using the platform, the ins and outs, and how they've made it work for them. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our education director to move to the next slide. And I'm not seeing the next slide. There we go. All right, so just a couple of tips as folks are joining us. Let me take a look here, see how, we've got quite a few people still joining us, so we tend to delay just a moment or two at the very beginning. Couple of notes though for you. Your microphone is muted, so we cannot hear you. If you're yelling at your screen, we're not going to hear you. You can yell all you want. You can use the chat feature, and that is different and located in different places depending on the device that you're using. So just click around until you find the chat. You can use the chat to engage with other participants if you feel like that's appropriate. Please use the question and answer feature for asking questions you'd like answered. But we typically recommend that you watch for a while, listen to the presentation, and then send your questions through if they have not already been answered. We had a couple of questions come in advance of the presentation, so we're already aware of those. And you can choose how you want to view this. This will be recorded today, so you can view it later or share it with others. We will be putting it behind in our resource library. I've already got somebody's chatting asking for a raise. It's like, okay, somebody wants a raise, good for you. Anyway, recording today, yes, we are recording this session. It will be available to you afterwards. And you can choose to view today all of the speakers at the same time by choosing the gallery view or having it be on active speaker view. And again, depending on the device you're on, you have to search around and find that. And just choose between those two options. Either active speaker, which means you're going to see the screen and just the person speaking, or gallery view, which means you'll see all of us on the camera the whole time. So, Teresa, if you'll move forward, I'm going to tell you why we decided to do this session and then tell you about our panelists today sharing their experiences and our main presenter and moderator, Lonnie Bickford. So originally, this session was planned as a luncheon in Houston. And we have our wonderful volunteers there, Bill Brownfield and Faith Pate, who help coordinate that. And because of COVID-19, we determined that we were not going to be able to have an in-person luncheon, so we opted to shift this to a webinar. And then we expanded it because we know that it is something that every member needs to see or hear about if they're not already using online auctions. So graciously, they allowed us to shift from a luncheon at the local level to a webinar that would be available to all members. That's why we're here today. And again, this is not an infomercial or to convince you that you need to do online auctions. We just want to answer your questions and explain why you might want to consider it and why these experienced operators have shifted to online auctions only. Our panelists today who are going to join in, their names are here on the screen. Cassie Dodgen, Pinnacle Storage Properties. Cassie, if we could get you to say hello.
Hello, everyone.
This is Cassie. Ann Parham with the Parham Group and Joshua Management.
Good morning. Hi.
Hi, Ann. And Ross Pfeiffer with Hickson Properties Incorporated in San Antonio.
Good morning, everybody.
and that's Ross. So those are our panelists, and we asked these folks to be a part of our conversation because they have so much experience and they deal with so many facilities and so many auctions. And Ross's background is particularly deep, as when he worked for SureGuard, he actually managed 150 properties. It's a much smaller group with Hickson, but they still have a large portfolio and has many facilities, and Cassie has 20. I'm kind of flubbing my intros because our point of having these folks on is they're here to tell you what it's like for them to use online platforms. They do not all use the same platform, so I'll say that. So we have experience with different platforms at the table, and to just answer questions directly from folks who use the platforms themselves. So if you will move forward one, Teresa. Our main presenter today, who's going to kick things off and tell you about online auctions, how they work, why they're advantageous, and some other tips for making them work, is Lonnie Bickford, the owner of StorageAuctions.com. Lonnie is a longtime TSSA member, sponsor. He is a board member for the Louisiana Association, and he may be one of our first out-of-state presenters. We tend to focus on folks who are from Texas, but he's a great guy. I'm going to kick it over to Lonnie and let him take the presentation from here.
Hello, everyone. Hope the ones of you guys that got the rain and storm last night didn't have hail. I think for once it stopped in Texas and didn't make it all the way to Baton Rouge. We've gotten our 6 inches of rain for the week, so we're good. As Jenny said, I've been a member of TSSA for a while. I've owned stores in Texas. I own stores in Louisiana now, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, Gonzales. Built stores, bought stores, had them catch on fire and flood. Flood is the worst. As a owner, I did my own auctions for 20 years and was always quite frustrated with just some of maybe me having to be there that day, the rain that would show up. One time the sleet that came and made us not have the auction because no one could drive because we don't have a salt truck in Louisiana, so all the bridges and roads shut down. And that particular day was the day I decided I was going to go to online auctions, and used a vendor and met with several others actually in Dallas at the Spring TSSA. I think that was 2016. It was in Dallas. And I met with all the vendors of that space then and decided as a storage owner, there were certain things that, I kind of wanted to see the software to do that as software writers, maybe they didn't quite have the same philosophy. So this has become my 19th startup company, StorageAuctions.com. We've done thousands of auctions, and I've known way more about auctions than I ever really cared to know. Always enjoyed a live auction. I went to auction school, but this online stuff is real different. It's different than how I perceived it was going to be for storage, and it's different than a lot of folks ask me at the trade shows from their perception of what the auction for storage will be like. So we're going to get into some of that now. The first thing I noticed that along for my stores, but in talking to many of the other folks here, there was not a lot of control process behind how we manage delinquent units and when we sent them to auction, how late they had to be. Did we have to wait to have 3 or 4 units at one time? There wasn't like a set guideline that the online process is now allowing us to be able to do. We'll get into some of the reasons why and some of the reasons the panel kind of moved them into that position, but seemed to be a lot of chaos behind it. And as a guy that came from the industrial world, working with Valero, Exxon, Shell, the big refineries, one of my previous lives, everything had to have a process, everything had to have a method. So I wanted to put that into the thought of what are we doing with these delinquent units? How do we get our unit back? So one thing we noticed after seeing many units come across our site is a lot of the units that are left over for us to deal with the abandoned treasures left behind in a storage unit. Unlike the TV show, they've gotten a lot of stuff out of the unit. They've left their trash because they don't have dumpsters on property at their house, and they leave us this lovely stuff for us to go behind. And we estimate that right at 85% of the units that come across the auction block, if you will, using the old live auction term, have been picked over and just left behind stuff. It may be more than in these two photographs, but they're not full units, full to the top and the side, the way they were when the people rented a unit. No one rented a unit just to put a wheelbarrow full of stuff in the back corner. Didn't pay 18 months of average rent to store those little bit of stuff. So making it more timely, making it more efficient, getting that unit back to a rentable status as an owner of storage was something that you'll see some of the reasons why the online will kind of give you another option to make this happen quicker. So for the old days of waiting till we have 6 or 8 units, I think it's kind of madness. And to borrow Kevin O'Leary, who's the best villain on Shark Tank, my wife really doesn't like his way of thinking. I tend to think like him sometimes. Just stop the madness of not having a process. So we go into some of the reasons why. And
Lonnie.
Yes.
Lonnie, can I interrupt you just for 1 minute? I blasted right by our polls. I was waiting for a lot of the folks to join us, and we were going to start with a couple of questions. So before we go into the reasons, let's find out who we have with us today. Teresa's going to put up our first poll question. And those of you who are here for the webinar can see this on your screen. It will not be part of the recording. But if you would choose one of these right now, what is your role with regard to a self-storage facility? Are you a facility owner or partner, third-party fee manager, a facility site manager, or supervisor, supplier or vendor, or other? If you'll choose one of those, if you're a supervisor, choose facility site manager. We meant to put that as one of your choices. So we'll give you just another couple of seconds to vote. Should be a pretty easy choice. Go ahead and end the poll, and let's see our results. So today, we have the majority of facility site managers, 58% of you are facility site managers, 25% facility owners or partners, 3% third-party fee managers, 2% supplier or vendor, and 12% of you identify as other. You didn't fit that category. Might have been because we left supervisor off. So let's go to our next poll question. So how are you currently conducting your foreclosure auctions? If you're here today, we're kind of wondering if you're trying to get tips about doing your auctions or if you just have not pulled the trigger yet. So are you choosing to do your auctions online only, in person only, both online and in person, depending on something, or do you not ever have auctions? Choose one of those. So that should be a relatively easy choice too. Let's go ahead and close the poll and see what our response rate is. So 36% of you do in-person auctions, 38% online auctions, 10%, maybe some of you can send me a chat message about why you're doing both online and in person and sticking with both. And 16% of you today don't ever have any auction. I think Lonnie's going to get into that. We're going to address that as a topic as to why you should be having auctions eventually, at least occasionally. Do we have one more poll, Teresa? Can't remember if we have one more question. Yes, we do. We have one more question. If you are not doing auctions, this is just for that small group that are not doing auctions. If you are still using in-person auctions rather than online, what is the primary reason? Choose only one of these. I rarely auction units. It doesn't seem worth it. I'm afraid people who buy units online will not pay me. I don't think I'll net as much money once I pay a fee to the platform provider. I don't understand what is involved or how to post units on an online platform. Or I like overseeing the auction process myself in person, or other. So choose one of those reasons and we'll display that for that group of you who is not currently doing online auctions. I cannot see how many responses are, so I'm going to assume that we're ready to close again. And let's see what our results are. Somebody put that in the chat instead of choosing. Let's see what this person says in chat. Okay, here are our responses on this answer. 36% of you who are not doing online auctions said, I don't understand what is involved or how to post units on an online platform. Well, good for you, the 36%, we're gonna talk about that today specifically. Our others are 25% or other, whatever that is. You can shoot me a chat. I was about to look at one of the chats that came through, or shoot this through the Q&A. And the others are kind of mixed. 11% of you like overseeing the auction process yourself in person. 8% don't think you'll net as much money. 11% you're afraid people who will buy will not pay. And 8% I rarely auction units. It doesn't seem worth it. So Lonnie, we're fairly mixed on our answers, but 36%, which is the majority, said they just don't understand how the platform works. Karen says, let me, if you'll close that, Teresa, real quick. I cannot see the chat right now. Let me get the chat up. See what we have. A couple of people have made notes, Lonnie. Regular bidders told me they hate online auctions. Well, I bet they do if they were coming to in-person auctions and they had the advantage of doing that. Well, you can talk about that too. Seldom have auctions. I use a professional auctioneer, never tried online, and only been open for a couple of weeks. You get a pass. If you've just only been open for a few weeks, hopefully you're not needing to have a foreclosure auction yet. All right, I think that's the end of our polling questions. So back to you, Lonnie. We'll pick it up with why we should, why they should go online with their auctions.
Okay, thanks. And those numbers tend to follow the same kind of trends we've seen when we poll the audience in lots of other places. Why go online? I'll talk on a couple of the things you'll see as bullet points here that as an owner, the real thing that I guess pushed me over the edge, it's sleeted. It was January. In Louisiana, we can have our auction a little bit quicker than Texas. We only have to run one newspaper ad for 10 days, and you guys run two for 2 weeks. So I had run my ad. I left my duck hunting camp. I drove back to Baton Rouge, and it sleeted. And they shut down the roads, and no one came to the auction. So I had to resend letters, rerun ads. And while I'm standing there waiting for someone to show up, my buddies are in the duck blind texting me saying, you missed a great day. It's sleeting here and the ducks are flying. And being from Louisiana, it's just about a misdemeanor offense. I decided that day I'm going to use online auctions. And the first one I used was not typical and normal. I got $800 for a unit, which is not the normal average price. But I was very excited because I had never gotten $800 before. But I know we got a panel here. They've used auctions. Ross, you know, what kind of pushed you over the edge?
You know, we were using the same auctioneer for about 25 years. And when he decided to retire, we picked up a new auctioneer. And we just never saw the same type of bids coming in that we were used to. Plus, I think the times changed and kind of allowed us to try some new things. But really, it boiled down to, for us, we had a lot of advantages since then. But the main reason really was the low number of people that were showing up to the units, and then therefore a lower amount that we were getting per auction. So. But since then, it's made it a lot easier on all the processes. So it kind of one led into another, so to speak.
Kathy, you have anything on that?
Absolutely. We grew very quickly, and we needed to streamline our process. You know, we got tired of a unit having one space that was delinquent, you know, that's been picked through, and having to decide if we want to keep that on our books, or, you know, make the trip to go out there to auction it ourselves or pay the auctioneer. So really it was a matter of being able to streamline that process. And no matter if you have 1 unit or 10 units, you can still have the auction for the month. You can still get those off your books. And you don't have to worry about if 3 people show up or if 10 people show up. Online, there's countless amounts of people and we're able to have them on a monthly basis. So just some consistency with online auctions is helpful alone.
Another thing, as my own auctioneer for Apple Tree Storage, something that really frustrated me, and I know that we got a mixture of owners and a lot of managers online today, that you get there and you watch these bidders, and they go from auction to auction. They know each other. You appliance guys, buddies with the furniture guy. The furniture don't want the washing machine, so he makes a deal, and they don't bid on the same unit. They split it up. They're in collusion, and the end result is we as storage owners get a whole lot less. And I've seen it. I've seen them go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you got the first one. I get the second one. He gets the third one, and everybody bids $20. When we started researching, about going to online auctions as a business model, I started going to other storage facilities auctions, something I had never done. And I pulled up at an auction, and most of the same crowd that comes to my stores was there. And there was a guy shows up that I'd never seen him before. When he did, the whole crowd kind of moaned and groaned. He walked up to the front door, and there was a little guy in there that buys a pretty good bit of units from my stores live. And this other guy shows up, and they look at each other like two pit bulls. They just about start growling. They walk outside, reach in a pocket. One of them flips a quarter. The other one calls heads or tails. He wins. The guy reaches down, grabs his quarter, gets in his truck, and drives off. The new guy I didn't know won. He bought 12 of the 13 units that day. Those two agree whoever wins the coin toss gets the day. And when the one that won, like nobody wanted to bid against him because he gets really mad. He runs you up on the next auction if you try to get a unit. That kind of stuff, as an owner, just frustrated the mess out of me. I mean, the idea that these guys think that we built a $5 million, a $10 million facility so we can facilitate the inventory for their thrift store drove me crazy. So anyway, now when online, they can't do that because they don't know who they're bidding against. But let's go to some of how it works. Let's see. Oh, wow. There we go. So how it works, it's an auction. The Texas lien law tells you what you have to do. It's not different because it's online. You follow the same lien law. You follow the same timeline. You're going to send your notice and claim letters at the same time. You're going to send, you're going to take your photographs, and you'll be using that for online. That's something you weren't doing necessarily before. Your publications in the newspaper are identical. The only thing as far as requirements of being two, one in each week, and then instead of saying that auction is going to be on your facility property, you're going to say it's at www online auction and whatever provider you're using there. The rules for your auction, some of the platforms have different thoughts. Some of them have kind of set rules and you follow their rules. As an owner, just the way I am, I don't really like people telling me what to do. So we've left the rules up to the facilities. We suggest, and most of the online auction companies suggest, a 72-hour clean-out period for the bidders and no dumpster privileges. And then we do suggest getting a $100 cleaning deposit and give that back to them after they've cleaned out the unit. You will be getting bidders you've never seen before. You'll be getting people from typically about a 100-mile radius, and that expands in Texas because, as I was told, I'll drive 100 miles to drink a cup of coffee with someone in Texas. Y'all are big ways apart sometimes. And you're going to have people you've never seen before. So you may know historically, oh, Joe can be bad about not cleaning out a unit, but you don't know the new guy, Bob. Well, get the $100 clean out, give it back, deposit, give it back to him. And that's just a good practice. Again, it's your auction. You get to decide how it works, how you want it to work. And then when to put the auction up online, we suggest, and this is, I think, a really good best practice, is to have it start online when your newspaper runs and says it's going to be online. That way, if a bidder's looking online for an auction to go to. He sees the ad. He looks for the units that you've said are in the ad, and he sees the pictures. If you wait and don't post the online auction to start till a couple of days before the auction would end, there's a chance they come looking for it. They say, oh, I bet the tenant pays for those units. They're not going to have an auction this month. So we think our best practice in Texas, you've got 15 days between your ads starting and when you can sell. Go ahead and get those pictures up online. Let the bidders see. Let the power of the internet do what it does. It's going to give you hundreds of viewers. Great units get thousands of viewers instead of the handful or even 20, 30 guys that may still show up at a live auction.
Bonnie, can I ask you a question just to clarify? We've had a couple of questions come in on the procedures part, and I think you answered them already. I feel like you did, but I just want to be sure and clarify. You know, we had a question yesterday from Wayne in advance as to the notices for an internet-based auction. And as Lonnie said, just to clarify, they are not different. You still have to run it in Texas. At this point today, we've not been able to successfully lobby for the removal of newspaper ads, even though no one sees them. We all know that. You know, maybe these bidders see them, but we haven't gotten there yet. You still do have to run 2 newspaper ads. If your newspaper offers an online option versus the print option, you can use an online newspaper to run your ads, but you do have to run your ads twice in a newspaper of general circulation in the county, whether that be their online version or their print version. The timing, I think Lonnie did a good job of explaining that as far as, you know, keying it up so that your auction is going to start around the same time your ad is going to run. You could have it start earlier. That's not against the rules, right, Lonnie?
Yeah.
It could start earlier. You just don't want it, you know, basically what he's saying is probably a good idea to run it for that whole 14-day period from when your ad appears to the end of the auction process. Rhonda asked if you can post your ad, if your ad can have both the facility address and the website. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that other than just to say where your facility is located, and that's perfectly fine, but the auction itself is taking place on an online platform, so that's the important part. The statute requires that you say where the auction is taking place. The auction is taking place online on this platform, not at your facility.
Can I be?
So now Rhonda clarified, let me just say, I'm sorry, Lonnie, she did clarify she wants to have her auction online and in person at the same time. So I'll let you take that.
If you got about
You're shaking your head.
$10,000 unit, if you got about a $10,000 unit, we can facilitate that. I actually thought that when we started this business, that was going to be the model. It doesn't work that way because most of the units are just not worthy of tying up a person watching the internet and standing there calling the bid. Meacham Auto Sales, Sotheby's, they do that type of stuff. These are storage units. Most of them are just abandoned junk, and you really can't afford to have humans tied up live and efforts in marketing happen online. It's just, you're going to best have to pick one way or the other. I do want to clarify some technical legal terms that Jen was using there, and I had to learn this because I had to learn this. The bidding is taking place online. An auctioneer is defined as the person getting the money. Since the store collects the money, the auction legally in the courtroom would still have happened on property. So you might put in your letter that the bidding is taking place online at storage, whatever. And if you say bidding instead of auction, it's splitting hairs, but it's kind of the technical way that they would prefer you say it. I don't think that's going to ever come up, and one of our attorneys, Connie or Scott Zucker, someone have to go defend this thing. But an auctioneer, some of the boards came after us asking, well, you're an auction company, you don't have a license in our state. So we said, well, define auction. And it turned into that if we didn't escrow the money and at the end of the auction pay lump sum to the recipient of the auction, the storage facility, we weren't considered an auctioneer. And actually, my home state, Louisiana, gave me some of the most trouble. And she said, the name of your company is storageauctions.com. I said, well, the name of hotels.com is hotels.com, but they're not a hotel. They book hotels. We market your auction. We get you the bidders and the bids. They bring you the money. So technically, you're the recipient of it and the auctioneer, actually. We're just your marketing company, but you do want the notification of where the bidding is taking place to be in the newspaper and on your letter. Sorry. It's a whole lot for nothing.
I think that's some good clarification, Lonnie. And our attorney, Connie Heyer, has said the same thing, that the sale at the end actually transpires when the money changes hands and you receive it. But good clarification. I think we've answered all our questions about procedures, unless others have questions you want to shoot through right now. Lonnie, I think we should ask our panelists if they have any best practices or tips, things that have really made their online auctions work well. So I'm going to call on Ann first.
The first thing I want to clarify with everybody, because it seems like people are like, we don't really know how this works. The best thing about going with one of the auction facilitator companies like Lonnie's, and then there's some others out there, is that the staff is more than willing to help you walk through all of this the first few times you do it. And they're available to help you with procedures and how things work. And once you learn how to do it, this is the easiest thing you've ever done, honestly. One of the reasons I quit doing it is that Storage Wars, like I said, was a good and bad thing for us. It made everybody aware that, yeah, we're going to sell your stuff. The bad thing that I ran into is I had 60 people show up to one of my facilities in Florida one time, and it made me very nervous that I had all these random people walking around my secure storage site that, it's hard to control that many people. I did make a lot of money off those units that time, but I just felt uncomfortable with all those people. The other thing was what Lonnie was saying about they collude with each other. I call them auction carnies. They're like the carnival people that go from one carnival to another. So that was the other thing. The biggest thing, and I think we're going to see it in the next slide, is when you start doing this is to make sure you take great pictures. And that's because that's your big selling point, and to really get in there and take pictures of really hot items. The other thing is to always list. We got used to listing household goods. Well, list the washer and dryer that you see in the back there. List the air compressor, I think is one other example we have. But list all of those items that people are basically looking for, not just 5 boxes, because we don't really know what's in those boxes. List those really tangible items that people will come to an auction to want to buy.
And Ann, I think you said when we talked about this earlier that, like you said, you want to list them specifically. You had previously been listing in your ads, and that was the only place where your listings, when you were having a physical in-person auction, you would just say household goods. So it's
Right.
just kind of generic. So again, Ann's tip is, be specific in your listing. Lonnie, is there a limit on the description or the things that people can list when they post their auctions?
I think most sites let you have a pretty big space. We have tags that you can click, washer and dryer, bicycle, and then we have a place you can write, because there's always strange things that we'd have to use the dictionary if we had a tag for everything. And you're the folks taking the pictures, the managers or auction coordinators or whoever's taking these pictures. You're seeing with your eye better than maybe some of the pictures in the dark corner is gonna show, and we'll talk about pictures more in a minute. But if you see it's the washer and the dryer, but the dryer's got boxes all stacked on it and it's right behind something else that maybe the picture's not going to make it clean to see, list it as washer and dryer. Just don't count on them being able to blow that picture up and find it. It will make a difference. The descriptions, it's online, photographs are really going to make a difference on how the dollars come in. And while we've got the panel going, and I think we had some of the questions of why you do or haven't done online. I know a lot of folks are concerned of maybe the bidder not showing up. If someone on the panel wants to discuss what experience have they had about an online person coming or not coming and how that's worked out for you guys. Ross?
Sure. You know, we've been doing this for almost 2 years, and I think we've had maybe 3 or 4 times where the person who won the bid never showed up. And we had some really good success on 2 of those where we ended up getting the second bidder, second place guy that actually ended up coming and purchasing it at the price that he put in. So it worked out fine. And then the other two times that it happened, we ended up just holding on to it and selling it again the following month. My guess is that probably 3 out of the 4, if not 4 out of the 4, were potentially the customer who had the unit, who bid on it just to keep it going up, thinking that they were going to be able to extend their time in the unit, but that doesn't work too well.
Ann or Cassie, you have anything on some of the difficulties?
I mean, Ross, said all of it. I mean, we go down the line. If the first guy doesn't show up, we get in touch with whoever the next highest bidder was and continue going down that line.
It's a concern. The bidders will complain about if you tell them you're going online. They're complaining because now they have new competition. I just texted a photograph a few minutes ago to one of the guys who used to buy the most units at my live auctions at my stores in Louisiana. And he bought for probably 5 years. He'd buy at least half the units every month. And it's a t-shirt that we're sending out to some of our top bidders. And it says top bidder on there. And I sent him a picture right before this started. These t-shirts just came in. He said, well, I don't really qualify anymore because I can't afford them on your stupid website, because he used to steal these things. He was the king of collusion. He got great units for under $100. And now when he wants it, he's got to pay. And he don't like bad units. He don't like the leftover junk. He wants the whole house of furniture. But boy, he don't like paying $500 and $600 and $700. And I just kind of had to smile at him because he and I have a fun relationship. But anyway, the bidders will say they don't like it because they can't smell the units. And not sure why they like to smell storage units so much, but I've heard that dozens of times. I don't want to go online, you can't smell it. And I wouldn't want to smell it. Maybe they're concerned about some smells. But anyway, we're going to go a little bit more about how to do this thing and make it efficient for your company. The biggest thing that I did this actually before we went online, was we started scheduling our auctions monthly. And when I did that, when I picked a date and we set that date ahead of time, it changed the conversation between my storage manager and the tenant. Instead of him saying, hey, you need to pay your bill, we're going to have an auction sometime in a few weeks or a month or 2, and you're going to go to auction. The conversation changed to the auction is on the 16th. You're in it. If you don't pay your bill, you're going to lose your stuff. And it made it not this thing that his boss, me the bad guy, might do. It's got a date and you're in it. And the collections, when we did that, we saw a real measurable difference in the amount of units that we sent to complete through the auction. To the point that the last year before we went online, we were down 33% in the number of units we were selling by having an actual monthly scheduled auction. The problem was when we would get it down to 1 unit, no one wanted to come to the auction. So when online came and I could sell it 1 or 2 units and still have the big crowd, it was a complete no-brainer. And the biggest thing I suggest for all you guys, get a calendar, plan it out ahead of time. You can count backwards and know when your newspaper ads need to be. You can see that, oh, wow, July 4th is, on this day of the month this year, we don't want to have it on that day, or Thanksgiving or some of the other holidays. Because if you just pick the 28th, you're going to hit a Thanksgiving that's going to mess up your auction if you just say, we're going to have it every month on the 28th. Get the calendar out. That way you can plan ahead of time when the notifications have to go, when the newspaper have to go, and it's going to help your revenue collections at the store. Now, going into online, it's all about the pictures, you're selling stuff. I actually saw a storage picture I wanted to put in here, but I didn't have time today, Jenny. A vendor that we all know and like has a Facebook picture, and her lips aren't quite stuck out this far, but it was really funny that it's on her Facebook. And she sells metal buildings and has sold quite a few in Texas. And her and 4 girlfriends are all posing with this look. I don't know what this does on Match.com, but evidently it works. What works in storage is lots of pictures. So we asked for 7. And a lot of times the managers push back. Well, there's a picture. It shows everything in the unit. Well, yes and no. It's a great first picture. It's showing that the unit is full, top to bottom, left to right. It's a full unit. You don't want a college student that drives a Prius to bid on a 10 by 20 pack like this, because they're not going to be able to empty it out. So if you just take one bad picture and you show the barbecue pit, he might want to come buy the barbecue pit. So you want to get a lot of pictures, and to get to 7 can happen really quick. So here's 1. So then if you get in closer and take a picture of the upper and lower left and right quadrants, now you're already up to 5. So this air compressor, I'm gonna back up real quick so those who are watching bumpy internet, forgive that. But this is in the same unit, but you don't see it until you get inside the shadow of the door and your smartphone becomes smart and it changes the lighting settings. I'm gonna back up. That compressor is sitting on top of the toolbox. You don't notice that thing from this backed off picture, but when you get in there close, now your unit might have just went up another $50, $60, $70, or it may even brought in a whole new bidder that's like, okay, well, if it's got this, it's going to have some other tools. It's got a toolbox. It's got a barbecue pit. I'm going to roll the dice on this unit. So go through, and then for the flea market folks in Texas, and you guys are pretty much the king of that, there's a old-timey desk that some lady would know how to paint turquoise and pink, bring it to Round Top or Round Robin, or what are all the Red Robin, all the flea markets that are scattered all over Texas. Sorry about that. I should know these things. I'm turning red. I should be. But anyway, somebody paints that thing turquoise and pink, and it's going to a dormitory or a college apartment. For me, it's just a broken up old desk, but you want to give the bidders opportunity to find the kind of treasure they're looking for, because these things are bought in bulk and sold individually on Facebook and at flea markets, and you got to dig through there and give them an opportunity to see it. Going
I think
back
Anne
to the
had an example, Lonnie. I think Anne may have had an example of something she did with regard to photographs. We don't have a photo of it, but Anne, can you explain what that was?
Well, we looked in there, and there was an open box of these collector plates. And so we leaned in and, tried not to get in the unit, but leaned in there and put a flashlight on it and took some pictures of those collector plates. And that was what everybody was going after. It was about 10 by 10 full of other stuff, but suddenly that whole unit became extremely valuable because of those plates. So, like I said, you have to kind of think like your bidder, or think of, who's out there. And the thing that you get with the online auction is you get, hundreds more people that are out there just cruising around looking. That's kind of how you have to think. You have to think like the customer, like we have to think like our customers in self-storage. You have to think like that bidder, and who's out there looking at this stuff.
And I think another example, when we were talking about this, someone said there was a big box that contained Depends, and it's kind of a strange thing to talk about, but there's value attached to that. And it was a huge box, you know, and it brought in $500 because they zoomed in and got the pictures and showed the brand name, and suddenly people knew there was something in this box besides just an empty box. And again, good point of being specific on your photographs. We do have some questions that have come through, Lonnie, that we'll get to at the end. I just want people to know we're not ignoring them, about specifics and, you know, a little bit more on the how-to side of things. So we'll let you finish this up and then we'll get into those things.
Okay, for the bidders, most of them are probably doing online now. There's so much product, and they can be in so many places at once online. But even the ones that complain about it, they still really like to be able to buy good junk or this type of stuff. Well, the treasured belongings in an abandoned storage unit. I'm not supposed to call it junk. SSA fusses at me. So they're going to eventually figure out they're saving a whole lot of gas not driving all the way out to Waco and to Hereford, Texas, to find out that the tenant for the 2 good units paid, and now there's just really a pile of abandoned stuff in a unit covered in dust. Gives the best guys the best opportunity to bid on the better units, and they'll start. Well, we're actually getting down to where bidders are bringing stores to us that they don't want to drive out there to have to look at those units. So they say, hey, you need to go online. That way I can keep bidding at your place, but I'm not going to drive all the way out there for your 1 and 2 units. So the bidder pressure for you to stay back, we feel like it's kind of softened. It gives them time to research items that are in it. And then there's no live auctioneer pressure talking fast. For the ladies, and this is some real numbers we pulled off of our data a couple months ago. Over 50% of our sign up in Texas, we just happened to pick Texas to be one of the states we studied, were female bidders signing up. And a live auction full of dually trucks and big gooseneck trailers, and maybe sometime a rough crowd of guys, is not a place that's always welcoming to new folks. The online process gives anybody kind of a fair chance. They bid from their phone, they bid from their desk at home with their feet propped up. But anyways, I think that, well, we've got one more number. We debated on whether to put this in here, but these are some real numbers. This is including the $10 units and the $20 units. Over a large portfolio or multiple portfolios, we were seeing view counts from 150 on a pretty bad looking unit up to the bell curve is 500 on the better units, and it goes up to 1,000 and 2,000 views on really, really cool stuff. You know, we had a Model T one time in a unit, it had 3,000 people looking at it in multiple states. But the average sale price, it's running around 160. And I know some of my competitors maybe say some higher numbers. A lot of times there's an asterisk at the bottom of their ad saying of selected units. These are some numbers that we pulled just to give you an idea what's going on. Connie, do we want to go to more questions now, or do we want to talk about auctions during the COVID?
Am I Connie?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I knew you were talking to me. I'm Jenny, but that's good. You'll get a kick out of this, Lonnie. I will say I was yesterday talking to a very, very long time member who I love dearly, but he is one of the cheapest of the cheap and knows how to stretch a buck. And he said that he had been doing live auctions for as long as he has been in the business, which is 30 years. And he finally decided to give your platform a try because you wore him down. And he said he's been extremely happy with the results. His average was $175. And I told him he was slightly over the average that you quoted us for this presentation. So good for him. I do have a couple of procedural questions, but before we go to those, I did want to ask, I know we talked earlier, Cassie, you have some rules in regard to best practices. You have some rules with regard to your employees. We had heard some feedback from folks with regard to managers managing the auctions. Can you give the group, Cassie, an explanation of what your policy, your company policy is with regard to
Absolutely.
employees?
So we have a very strict policy with online auctions. I know sometimes that going from live to online can be tricky when you shift that to your manager taking a little bit more control. I know that was one of the poll questions as well. We made a strict policy that managers, friends of managers, family members of family members, if they're related or know the person working at our counter at any one of our locations, they cannot bid on that online auction. So we don't like that gray area. We want to make sure we have a clean, solid auction. And I don't need the manager at one location or their brother bidding on a unit at a sister location. We make a very strict line that that's not allowed across the board.
I'm not, if everyone was getting the kind of lag that I was getting, you were kind of in and out. So just to kind of recap, if any of you were struggling to hear what Cassie said, they have a strict line. They've drawn a line in the sand and said their employees are not allowed to bid on any unit on any auction. So I think that's good to know, and it's just a kind of a clear cut. And do you have any additional tips on best practices or anything with regard to your employees or anything else that you want to add?
Basically, kind of the same thing. I think that the main thing is that you get the managers kind of involved with this, just like you did when it was a live auction, because they're the ones that know the tenant. They're in touch with the tenant. They're the ones that are going to have to deal with the buyer when the buyer comes. So you kind of keep them in the loop the whole time. As far as how things are going, but definitely what Cassie said, none of us are allowed to bid on that's all we need is more stuff. But yeah, none of us are allowed to bid on the thing that's for sale. And it also helps if you at the corporate level or the owner level are tracking the process with this tenant all the way through, so that there's no possibility of there being kind of fraud with the selling of the unit. And I know that, sometimes that happens. We've had customers that stage a unit and things like that, and kind of trying to prevent that from happening, to make sure it's an honest and open auction, that there's nothing, going on that's not quite on the up and up. So that would just be my big suggestion, is to get everybody to stay involved and to watch, be involved with the tenant before it even goes to auction.
And Ross, just as a follow-up on that, and then we'll answer the questions that have come through, and then we're going to shift to a slightly different topic at the end of our presentation. Ross, with all of the auctions that you've done, Ross, can I get you to acknowledge so you pop up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so Ross, you had a lot of experience with auctions because, of course, you worked for Shurgard, and I had all those facilities, and then worked for Hickson. And you have how many, 10, 11 facilities?
Right now.
Okay. Other tips, other things that you do or do not do, things that you want to add on?
Sure. And it's the little things. We're not in the auction business. We're in the storage business. And most of us know that once a unit goes to auction, in that process, it gets harder and harder to collect your full rent, your late fees, etc. So we try to stay as furthest away from actually having to sell the unit as possible. And back in the day, when all we had was the newspaper ad, we would make a copy of the newspaper ad, put it in a regular envelope, and mail it to the customer, just so they would see their name highlighted and know that we're serious. Now we can do that. Plus, I can give them the link to where their unit is online. And Lonnie may not like this, but we get paid a lot faster. And once they see, like, hey, wait a second, everybody's looking at my stuff now. They want to get that off as quickly as possible. And that's what we want. We want them to pay. We want them to, if they're going to stay, continue to pay. If they're not, then get their stuff and go, so we can get it re-rented to someone else that will. So there's some little tricks of the trade, in getting paid. But our managers like it just from the sense that as soon as they pay, that's one less person that they've got to call and hound and all that kind of good stuff like we all do. But just a little bit of a tip there.
Thanks, Ross. Someone just let me know. I think I've unspotlighted you. Someone let me know that your photo, or you were not on camera. It was just me speaking. I'm not sure if that's been happening throughout. I'm a little blindsided. Today is a perfect example, and I don't know if I'm on camera right now or not. I cannot tell. Today was a perfect example of technology gone wrong. Everything was great. We practiced yesterday. We've done 5 of these webinars, and suddenly my internet dropped off just as we were starting. So I had to scramble just a little bit to get on data, and I am unable to see who's on camera right now. So Teresa, you can maybe take control of that if you need to. Let's ask a couple of these questions that have come in since we're running almost at 4 minutes only. Sorry, someone from the office is sending me messages, and I'm looking to see if we have any other issues. Okay, one of the questions that's come in, and Lonnie, you can answer this. Teresa, is Ross still spotlighted on the video?
You are.
Okay. All right. So we'll just assume that whoever's speaking is who's going to appear on camera right now. And Lonnie, you may be the one to answer this, or I can. 2 people have asked about vehicles in online auctions. And I guess my question in return to them, whether it's Lindy or Karen, is why not? Why wouldn't you auction your vehicles the way that you would auction your other units? There's nothing in the statute, I'll tell you that up front. There's nothing in the statute that says you cannot auction a car the way that you could any other unit. So let me have Lonnie follow it up and tell me if there's any reason why you couldn't have a vehicle in an auction.
Well, I am not the attorney.
Now, I'm sorry, let me clarify. Is there any reason on the practical side? I'm not the attorney either, but I can tell you with no hesitation that an auction can take place with a vehicle in it just as it could when you were doing them live and in person. There's no difference. You have to follow different procedures going up to that. We all know that. For a vehicle, you have to notify any lien holders. There are other things you have to do first, but that doesn't change the fact that ultimately you were auctioning it at an auction. So is there some reason that I don't know about that you couldn't have an vehicle in an auctioned unit?
The auction of the vehicle, it really goes outside of the storage liens statute and gets into vehicles and registered vehicles in most every state, and every state is different. There are definitely ways you can get registrations and titles like mechanics can if they're left at a mechanic shop and they don't come back and pay. You do have to check and see if there's someone that has a loan on it, a bank, and then you have to offer it to them. There's a lot of different steps, but ultimately, yes, they can be sold. We sell them on our site every day. Sometimes people, especially if it's a bit of an older car that truly has probably just been abandoned, they'll say parts only, no title available, and they sell. They absolutely sell. I've sold one in Dallas that was totally crushed, just completely banged up in the front. The motor was on the passenger seat. A guy from Oklahoma City drove down there to get it. He paid a lot of money, paid over $1,000 for it. I couldn't believe this guy paid for this truck. And I called him. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "It's a Harley Davidson edition F-150. He said, "I have the same silver F-150 that's not Harley Davidson. I'm taking the seats and the stickers on the side of the truck, and I'm turning my regular 150 into a Harley 150. You never know why these people want these things. We sold one that was in a unit, a newer model that was wrecked. I called the guy because I'm curious, like, what are you doing buying this smashed up little car? He says it's 1 year old. He says it's got 26,000 on the odometer. I can sell the odometer on the internet in about 10 minutes on eBay for $300. And it kind of made me think of that Yukon I bought out of Texas last year that had 3 or 4 year old Yukon that only had about 30,000 miles. Maybe I bought an odometer is what I really bought. People sell them every day. There are some specific things that you'll want to kind of make sure where your company stands on. Do you want to go full through the process of getting the title? Some companies require before you store on my property, you provide us with registration, evidence of a lien. You know, there's different operators that have different rules on parking. But most of the time I see them parts only, no title available, and they sell it like that.
Okay, so I don't want to go too far down that road because we're not here for a legal webinar. We, you know, as Christine is right on her chat, you can sell them like you can sell anything else. You just have to follow the special foreclosure procedures before you get to the point of auctioning. We'll leave it at that. And then a couple of other questions for you, Lonnie, or for me, I'm not sure. One person wanted to make sure it's okay to be running the auction before the 15 days is up. I'm reading her question. Still want to make sure it's okay to be running auction before the 15 days is up for the newspaper ad, or is it just 15 days to finalize the auction? I think Amy wants clarification on just that element, that, and maybe this is more of a question on the legal side of things. Does your auction have to start at the point where you put the ad in? You were saying that as a tip. You don't have to have your auction running from day 1 until day 15. You just suggested it, right?
Yeah, the auctions, the lien law has to be followed that you can't sell it till after the 2-week notices. So build your crowd, just like the marketing of a live auction would be happening during that time. You're building your crowd, they're bidding, but the auction is not happening until the hammer comes down the next day. So it's perfectly legal to save that extra time and get your unit back in service. That's why the best practice is kind of pointed out that way. It's done in every.
Robert asked, oh, so thank you, Lonnie. Robert asked if the tenant pays in full while the auction is live and in the middle of bidding. Is there a commission due on any amount?
Every company's got a little bit different way they handle that. There's typically a cancellation fee or a membership fee to be part of different platforms. So you'd have to kind of check around with the different providers to get the specifics. There's not so much a commission. It's just that we're running ads online. We touch that auction, that unit probably 5 times. And if we don't get paid some form of fashion somehow, we couldn't stay in business, because about 40% of all units end up getting paid.
And just to clarify, kind of on that same topic, as far as timing, going back one, Richard Rose asks if it matters what day the auction ends online. Is there a better day for auctions to close out than other days? Yes,
we studied this a lot. I feel like Monday through Friday works, but not early on Monday and not, let's say, after 2 on Friday. The professional used item merchandisers or the junk men, they're setting up the flea market on Friday. They're loading up, getting ready at the thrift store, their yard sale, whatever they're planning to do on Saturday, and you just don't see the best bidders as active late on Friday. Monday is actually our highest traffic day, but Monday morning is not the best bid day because they're just getting their week going. They're looking to see what's coming up during the week. Do they need to save a little money? I think after 10:30 on Monday morning, I like business hours all the time from 10:30 on Monday, and then after that you can go at 9 in the morning. I would never do a 7:30 or 8 in the morning, just to give your manager time to see if there was an online payment or if a payment dropped off, that you can cancel that auction before it actually goes off. But 9 to 5, except on Monday, I'd start at 10:30, and on Friday I'd end at let's say 3 o'clock. We have had some weekend auctions. Our support team for our company is not there to answer the phone. Not that it rings a whole lot, and your managers are not there on Sundays for a lot of stores. Some are. You kind of would like it to where when that auction ends, the bidder can show up and get the stuff. That's what I think.
To add real quick, this is Ross, that everybody probably has a different way of doing it, but what we found successful for us on our end, we typically will end our auctions at 1 o'clock on Wednesdays, and we have a 48-hour turnaround on the unit for the buyer to come and get their items out. we want them out before the end of the month so they don't incur another months of rent, bad debt that potentially they could have, as well as we know that they're probably going to be doing what Lonnie said and taking it to something on Saturday. So that's kind of been our kind of MO and how we've gone about it. But again, there's probably 100 different ways to do that.
Sometimes we can't see what the attendees are seeing, and I have someone sending me a message saying they can't see Ross on camera. I don't know if it's that your video is turned off, Ross. I tried to spotlight you during that presentation. Unfortunately, y'all might not get to see Ross's handsome face. You may just have to listen to his melodious voice today. Sometimes technology escapes me. I don't see that it's turned off, and I don't know why it wouldn't be popping up.
I see everything.
Someone else is saying they can see you. So there you go. Who knows? It may be the way that the person is viewing this. Hard to say. If you want to see everyone, you can turn it to gallery view, but we may have switched over where we're spotlighting just the speaker now. Some people are saying they see a small window. People are so helpful. They're telling me what they're seeing now, but we're at the end of the webinar, so it's too late for us to make too many adjustments now. Let's talk, while you're still there, Ross, and hopefully still appearing on camera, how do you make sure your online buyers take everything out of the unit and don't leave you hanging with the leftovers? And then I'll follow up on that same question with Ann and Cassie to see if they have any tips.
Sure. Actually, some of the locations, and we don't have this published in our particular online ad when they go and view a unit and see that the buyer has buyer rules per location that everybody can customize for themselves. But two ways. One is that you can either have a deposit and they don't get it back until they leave. And the other is we don't give out codes to the buyers to get in and out of the property. So the only way they can get in, the only way they can get out is by us vending the gate. And so before we let them out, we go back, take a look at the unit, make sure everything's done, and then they're on their way.
Cassie, do you have anything to add to that?
We do something very similar. Taking a deposit is truly a key, especially if you're having an issue with people not cleaning out units or you think it may be an issue. A deposit is absolutely helpful, and the no dumpster rule, so that way your dumpster doesn't end up overflowing, is also a giant key.
True.
Great. I don't know if you have any other magic words of wisdom, Ann. If not, we'll move on to the next.
One of the interesting things that I had a manager do in Florida is they took the person's driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't get the driver's license back until they walked out and checked the unit.
Great idea.
Yeah, I've had them do that when I have a female that's in a multi-story unit. When they go show a unit, they ask for realtors do this apparently, is take the driver's license and then they show them the unit. When they come back, they give the driver's license back. So
yes. And Christine, whom I think works for you, said that Ann is quite the smart woman.
Well, Christine is the reason I started doing online auctions. I will give her that credit. She was the one that really wanted me to do that. Yes.
Okay. Lonnie, Lisa Denton is asking if you provide a link to the auction to the tenant and everyone else, what keeps them from bidding on their own stuff and paying a lot less than they owe in back rent? I could probably answer this one too, because we get the same question with live auctions. It's really not unique to online auctions. My answer to it would be, what's the difference? If they're at an in-person auction, they could do the same thing. They could be bidding. You can't restrict them from bidding. Lonnie, do you have something to add there?
No, there's, I think there's dozens of, I say, wives' tales in storage, and one of them that I had always believed and was wrong, that you could restrict the tenant from bidding on their own stuff. The statutes are real clear. It's a public auction. You really can't stop them for that. We do allow facilities that have a troubled bidder. Historically, they come in and they don't clean it out. They cause a ruckus in the office. You can block that bidder from bidding. But I don't think you can block a tenant just because he's a tenant. Managers, I think, hate it worse than owners do. It drives managers crazy, the idea that the tenant's going to get over on them. But at the end of the day, as the owner, I just want my unit back. If they paid more than the rest of the people, let them get their stuff. go on and let's rent it to a great long-term 10-year tenant that puts it on auto pay and takes price increases with not a complaint.
One last question before we transition. I'm going to make a statement about COVID-19, and this isn't not why we're here today, but we'll talk about, whether or not people are holding auctions or not, and show y'all a couple of slides from a survey we did with members. But one last question from Richard is just if you could clarify, Lonnie, Richard's asking how they get paid in an online auction. How do they get the money? Does the person who has bought the unit pay when they get there? How does that work?
Yeah, we again let the stores set their own rules. We suggest cash only, and I do it because I'm an owner and I don't want to take a credit card from a bidder. The bidders are cash guys. They're selling it for cash on Saturday. They got a pocket full of cash, and sometimes their credit cards aren't the best things out there. So typically, I think the majority of the platforms, the bidders are coming in and giving 90% of the bid to the store. And we've already gotten a deposit to get skin in the game from the bidder of 10%. There's a little nuance difference in one of the platforms, but so if it's a $100 bid, he brings you $90. The auction's over, and they bring it to you. You can take checks, credit cards, or chickens. It's your store. You do what you want, but typically it's cash.
I would like a picture if you do end up taking chickens. Please send it to me. All right, so Teresa, are you able to put the slide up that shows the survey results? We're not going to dwell on COVID-19. We specifically decided to do that at the end of our conversation today so that we could chop that off later and archive this presentation for people to see at a later date. And at that point, hopefully COVID-19 will be a sad dream from the past and they won't be thinking about it anymore. But if you, Teresa, could share your screen and put that up, I'd like to say just a word about it. I think I've been really close to the camera. I'm just now seeing myself for the first time, and I've been leaning in. Scary. You're able to do that, Teresa?
If you just click to the next slide, it should come up.
I am not sharing my screen, so I cannot do it.
Next slide for me is COVID.
It's
Do you
the
want me
one.
to
Go ahead and
stop the
skip
share?
No, just go to the next one after that.
Okay.
You may have stopped sharing your screen, Lonnie. I'm not sure what's going on. I do not see it.
I see it on my end. Too new.
You're seeing it, Ross?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Panelists sometimes see things differently than attendees. If one of the attendees would send me a chat and let me know if you can see that poll, I'm not going to be able to talk about it because I can't see it. So somebody send me a chat message and tell me, okay, they're seeing it. Holly says yes. Several people can see it. I cannot see it. So maybe, Ross, you can read off the results for us, please. We had 2 questions that we asked our members, and we had about 280 people take the poll. That I can remember off the top of my head. If I remember correctly, the answers were along the lines of the vast majority of you were not doing auctions last month, in the month of April. Is that right?
Yeah, 264 out of the 278 did not have auctions.
Teresa, what did you say?
Yeah, there's 14 people, so about 5% said that they did have auctions during April.
So, and then the question for those 14 people was, did they do their auction online or not? I don't remember what the number was on that, but I think the vast majority who had auctions in April did them online. Is that right, Teresa?
Yes, that's correct. About 84, 85%, so 11 of those, and then 2 people had in person.
Okay, so that said, and I'm kind of working blindly because I cannot see these slides. Let me just say one thing and we'll wrap this up today. We talked with our panelists about their plans for auctions, and we've talked with a lot of members who are trying to decide whether or not they should go ahead and move forward with their auctions. That is a business decision. That's a decision for the owner of the property to make, for the manager to advise on as to what's right for you. But I think someone earlier in the presentation alluded to this. We always recommend that you not wait too long. I think Ross said that. if you wait a long, long time, you pretty much guarantee that you will never receive payment from people. And we've seen this over and over again. I've worked for the association for 22 and a half years, almost 23 in August. And that we see this over and over again. The longer you wait, the less likely your tenant will be able to pay you. So the same thing applies here. COVID-19 was a difficult and unprecedented time. I know you've all heard the word unprecedented 100 times, and I don't know if people can see me right now speaking or not, so I'm just going to spotlight myself just in case. You can switch over. Keep in mind this: these people typically did not pay you for the last 6 months or the last 90 days or whatever the case was, long before the coronavirus hit. And we said this in our first presentations. We totally get it. As an association, we understand that that's not something that you want to spend your time on during the transition, but it's time for things to return to normal, you know, and for people to get back on track. And I see a couple of chats here. Christine said she took over a unit that hadn't paid for 6 months. She was threatened with her life when Ann got wind of it. And she's absolutely right. Somebody's asking about a blinking light that they're seeing. We're having all kinds of technological challenges today, but we're going to end on this note. We're not here to do a COVID-19 presentation. This is intended to be a presentation about online auctions, why you should use them, how you can use them. And I want to thank our panelists and our moderator today. Thank you, Lonnie, and for your sponsorship as well. Ironically, we don't do a lot of sponsored webinars. Lonnie and his company, they were already sponsoring the Houston Luncheon. It just so turned out we decided to do this as a webinar instead. So that worked out well for us and for him, so he could explain some of the ins and outs in the process. Thank you to all of our panelists, all three of you. We really appreciate you being here. And those of you who are still on, let me see if I can see how many of you are still connected. If you would, right now, if you have any suggestions for our next webinar, the next thing we should do in the series, type it in the chat right now. Anything, and anything goes. Not to say we're definitely going to do it, but if you'll share that feedback with us, we would really appreciate it. Anybody? Let me see if anyone's putting anything in the chat. This part won't be recorded, so we won't put it out there for the world. Somebody said they love webinars. Tell me what you love. Tell me what you want to hear next. We've got a lot of ideas that we've come up with ourselves, but we like and try very much to give the members what they need. Being a great manager, Christine suggested. Thank you, Wayne, for your thank you to us for having the webinars. But please, if you think of other things, if you have what to do when people store illegal or toxic items, that's a good one. Any others? Any other suggestions before we pull the plug? How about just posting on eBay? That was, I think, more intended for the group. What about posting your auction on eBay? Any thoughts on that from any of the panelists?
eBay is a timed auction. So when the clock runs out, the auction's over. In a sense, I don't even consider that a real auction because if someone's bidding and they want to keep bidding, I don't want the clock to stop them. So one thing all of the online platforms for storage do, we do what's called a soft close. And if I'm at $100 and you bid 150, I'm gonna give 3 more minutes, even if the clock goes to 0 and you bid 1 second left, which is called sniping on eBay. If you try to snipe the unit on any online platform, they're gonna extend the clock, we call it overtime, by 3 minutes to let the bidding continue in case bidder number 1 got outbid at the last second, he can come back in. It's a time sale is what they actually call an eBay deal. That's how they get out of, some of the regulations they dance around. It may be considered a sale, but it's not truly going to get the highest number. Therefore, I don't think it meets the auction requirement of the statute. It's a time sale.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I can answer that. We have not had that question at a legal seminar.
eBay
it has to be a public auction, first of all. It has to be a public auction, which I guess eBay would be considered. You have to have some control over the start and the end of it. You have to be able to sync it up with your advertising. Beyond that, I'm not sure. We'll send you an answer directly. We can see who's who sent that through. Some of you are sending your chat messages through the questions, and some of you are sending your questions through the chat. There are different, I wasn't seeing the suggestions for the webinars through the Q&A because I was looking at the chat, but someone mentioned that to me. We will look at all those, we'll read those, and hopefully all your questions have been asked. Sometimes we can't answer every single question, but we do our best. I think we've answered all of the ones that have come through on the Q&A, and the rest are just suggestions for webinars. So we're gonna sign off, and yes, it is being recorded, and it will be posted, and you will get a link to it. So share with your friends, and thank you to all of our panelists. And Lonnie, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Bye, y'all.